Hi, everyone. Welcome to Microsoft Research Conversations in STEM. I'm Emma Dauterman, a 2021 Microsoft Research Ada Lovelace Research Fellow and a PhD student in the RISE Lab at the University of California, Berkeley. And I'll be your host for today's panel discussion on the future horizons of science. We have a lot to talk about, but before we get started, I want to remind you that we're planning to leave time at the end for some of your questions. You can submit them by clicking the Ask a Question button in the lower right corner of your Teams Live interface. So I'm going to start off by introducing our panelists, and then we'll get right into our conversation. So first, welcome Yael Kalai, a senior principal researcher at Microsoft Research New England and an adjunct professor at MIT in the Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab. Yael recently received her PhD from MIT, where her thesis was recognized with the George M. Sprouse PhD Thesis Award. Yael's current research interests are in cryptography and theoretical computer science. Next, meet Bichlien Nguyen. She's a senior researcher at Microsoft Research in Redmond, working at the intersection of chemistry, biology, computer science, and engineering. She's also an affiliate professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at the University of Washington. Her current interest is developing sustainable infrastructure for data centers, including storing data on DNA, in collaboration with the Molecular Information Systems Lab at the University of Washington. She received her PhD in chemistry from Washington University in St. Louis. And finally, we have Andromachi Chatzieleftheriou. She's a senior researcher in the Cloud Infrastructure Group at the Microsoft Research Lab in Cambridge, and her interests lie in the areas of computer systems, file systems, and storage. Andromachi develops disruptive cloud storage technologies for the future, and is currently working on Project Silica, a novel long-term archival storage system based on quartz glass, designed from the media up for the cloud. She holds MSc and PhD degrees in computer systems from the University of Ioannina in Greece.
Thanks, Emma.
Thanks. Yeah, great to have you all here. Our topic, so I'm going to start with our questions, and our topic is a big one today, future horizons of science, so let's go there. Science fiction author and futurist Arthur C. Clarke famously said the only way of discovering the limits of the possible is to venture a little way past them into the impossible. So let's start by addressing the current limits of the possible in your respective fields and how you're venturing into the impossible to lead us into the future. So let's start with Yael.
Okay, so that's a big one. So in cryptography, we face a lot of things that are impossible. Kind of the art of cryptography is actually getting around these impossibility results, and that's kind of our work. But one thing that I feel like, speaking about the future and where I feel cryptography is still far from delivering, is that there is a big gap between what we provide and the guarantees we give, the security guarantees we give, the privacy guarantee we give, and what's going on in the real world. So, for example, we provide really great encryption schemes and signature schemes and privacy, and we have provable guarantees that it's unbreakable under some widely believed assumptions, such as hardness of factoring. And yet, in the real world, we hear over and over again that things are broken. And so how are they broken? They don't actually break our assumptions. So they're not broken by factoring large numbers. They're broken because there's a gap from what we kind of our definitions and what's going on in the real world. So for example, we assume the secret keys are hidden. Well, of course secret keys are hidden, otherwise you can't do cryptography. However, in the real world, it's often not the case, unfortunately. The adversaries are able to get their hands on the secret key, either via side channel attacks or other means. And so that's an example of kind of a gap. So that's actually an example where we do have research on this topic. It's called leakage resilient cryptography, where we try to give guarantees even if the secret key is leaked. But going more to the future, one of the real problems in cryptography is in implementations. So we provide ways to come up with do things securely, but the way they're implemented is often in an insecure way. And that's one example where there's almost no research in that area, and there's a big gap. And I think kind of bridging this gap between kind of the theory of cryptography and the practice of cryptography is we still have long ways to go.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yael. Let's move on to Bichlien.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yeah, so where to begin? I feel like because I work you know, at the intersection of so many different fields, and some of them are quite old, and you know, they feel like kind of like these slow moving behemoths because you know, the processes, the intrinsic nature of the fields just take longer to do research on. And then there are fields where, you know, new inventions are popping up, you know, every left and right every day. And so I think one of the challenges here is that how do you make you know, interdisciplinary research be translational and impactful when the experiments and data generation kind of lag behind a lot of the computational models or the engineering aspects. And it's this, you know, odd feedback loop that kind of needs to be addressed. And so, you know, the challenge is how do we get all these pieces working together in concert, and how can we, you know, use basically all the learnings from each of these fields and kind of you know, harness all the synergies together and move forward. And so I would argue that we should look into the natural world and harness you know, the power of molecular engineering and molecular machinery. Yeah, that's my short take on it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Bichlien. Yeah, and finally, Andromachi.
Yeah, so typically there are 3 stages during the lifetime of every successful technology. In the beginning, we always observe a slow start where there is limited potential for growth. Then suddenly the technology takes off as the technology is tamed and we understand the basic mechanism behind the technology. And actually, this is when we can see the real impact and the great rate of improvement. And eventually, there is the maturity phase when the technology, where it is actually impossible to keep up this growth rate. And it's during the maturity phase that a technology might be discontinued and there might be a new emerging technology that actually takes off. And I will focus on the storage area, which is my area of expertise. So if you look at the storage landscape, we have currently in the cloud 3 main storage technologies. We have magnetic media such as hard disks and magnetic tape. And we also have flash memory. But all these technologies have been actually invented long before the cloud even existed. And actually, based on their historical trends, all these technologies are currently reaching their limits. Therefore, actually, at the same time, we have the cloud that brings new challenges to the storage landscape. And we live in the cloud era where we observe an unprecedented demand for data storage. And in fact, we're generating more data that we can actually afford to store. And most of the data that we store is actually degrading over time as we move to the next generations. And therefore, at Microsoft Research, we are taking on all these challenges with the conventional technologies. And we radically rethink cloud storage, starting from scratch and investigating the cloud storage from the media up, all the way up to the software.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andromachi. So you're each doing very interesting work in your fields. What inspired you to get involved in disruptive technology research, and why did you choose the path you're on as opposed to another? Let's go in the same order again. So we can start with Yael.
Okay, so why did I choose the path? Actually, there's 2 things to say why I chose the path and why I stayed in the path, which are a little bit different. So My background is actually in mathematics. My degree was in math, and I chose to move to kind of theoretical computer science from math because I felt like that I wanted to have some impact and to generate interesting things, and that's something that's very, very hard to do in pure math. So that's kind of what drove me to the theoretical side of computer science. And within that, I had to choose kind of a good home for myself. I was really intrigued by cryptography because it's really a place where magic happens. I remember I took a class in Weizmann Institute. I was a master's student there, and before I moved to MIT, and as a student. And I remember I took a crypto class with Adi Shamir, and I was just blown away by all the things that are clearly impossible. Somehow they managed to, make possible. It felt like a class in magic. So that's what drew me into the field. And the problems that they deal with are just really interesting. Like, what is knowledge? How do you prove that you know something? It's just kind of very philosophical and just beautiful. So that's what drew me into it, and a big part of what's keeping me in the field. But one other big part that I love about the field of cryptography and is definitely keeping me in the field is I just feel it's an amazing community. We have fantastic people, my best friends by now are my colleagues, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful community of people, great collaboration, just I wake up every morning and I just have fun for the entire day working with my amazing students, amazing collaborators inside Microsoft, outside Microsoft, so I'm super happy with the path I took. I'm loving every day of it.
Thanks so much. Yeah. Your description of falling in love with cryptography sort of reminds me of some of my own experiences as someone who studies cryptography as well. So moving on to Bichlien.
I think it would be really disingenuous for me to say that this is the path that I knew I was going to take, a long time ago. To be frank, I really never expected to be working here. But I think how I got here was the fact that as a kid, I was really interested in basically every field that I could study or touch or see. I collected bugs and rocks, and I wanted to be a paleontologist at some point. And I think a lot of when you think about I guess disruptive technology research, it really is all about STEM fields, but I'm also going to add art here because I think art is really important too. So I'm going to call it STEAM, as my colleagues, want to say, because STEAM, pushes us along. But I think being naturally interested in all of these areas and thinking about how they all work and interplay with each other led me on this path. So I say the natural desire to create things and then break things, because I think breaking things is really important as well to learn and reiterate, led me here. So that's again my short take on that.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting way of seeing it, and really like that connection to art as well. Andromachi.
Yeah, I remember I was still interning at Microsoft Research when I first heard about the opportunity of storing data inside glass. And to be honest, that was a wow moment for me. It felt like science fiction back then. I was excited by this amazing opportunity to completely to challenge the traditional system design thinking and to contribute to the design of an entirely new storage system designed specifically for the cloud, and following this holistic approach, starting from the media all the way up. And I think we are all lucky because actually Microsoft offers us the opportunity to work on cutting-edge technologies, and this is really inspiring. And the environment, as Yael said, it's a great multidisciplinary environment. It's great to collaborate with all these amazing people, and this is also a great motivating factor. And Yeah, if you're given the opportunity to shape the future of cloud storage, I think it's hard to, to turn it away.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thanks so much. So now let's talk in some more detail about what each of you is doing to advance the future horizons of science. Bichlien, I'd like to start with you. So give us an overview of what happens when we start mixing natural sciences with computer science, and what big changes we might expect to see in a future where data centers store and keep our digital data on DNA.
Yeah, so before I answer that, I think I want to just kind of divert a little bit of attention to, why I'm working at this intersection of chemistry, biology, computer science, and engineering. And I think, it's important to think about what are the greatest challenges that are going to be in our generation and the next generation. And, one of those challenges is going to be climate change and all the ramifications that come with it. And I'm not talking just about temperature increases or, pollution levels affecting human health or food and water shortages, or even increased risk in pandemics or social inequality associated with climate change. What I'm talking about is that these challenges are going to be such complex and huge problems that are, very pervasive and ubiquitous, and no single field can solve that challenge. And I think that's why working in an interdisciplinary space is so important, because we have all these different toolkits at our disposal, and we can begin tackling, the problem from all angles. And so, one of my projects that I've been working on is the DNA data storage problem. And Andromachi mentioned it earlier, where we are generating, data at such, at a pace that far exceeds what we can store. And so we actually, we have a problem where we can't store all the data that we want to. And so we should really be thinking about other ways to do, to replace traditional storage medium. And so, my interest is in storing digital information in synthetic DNA. That's what that's what the DNA data storage project is about. And it's really interesting because DNA, it already stores your molecular information, right? So it's not so far-fetched to think about how could we use DNA as a storage medium for digital data. And so, if you think about it, DNA is really incredibly dense. You could store exabytes DNA is really dense, right? It could potentially store, exabytes of data on a cubic inch, and by doing so, you not only shrink the physical footprint of a storage system, but we also know that DNA can be preserved for a long time, hundreds to thousands of years, unlike other storage medium that have to be, either rewritten to maintain the data, such as, archival tape. And, unlike other storage medium where you have to develop a reader associated with that storage medium, we're always going to be interested in reading interested in reading DNA in general, because there's so many genomic applications or clinical applications for it, and so DNA readers won't become obsolete there. So taking all of this into account, we did a recent life cycle assessment where doing storing a terabyte of data in DNA could actually reduce environmental footprints of a data center, by 2/3. So, and just to say, and I guess what I'm really trying to say is that being at the intersection of so many STEM fields or STEAM fields, you can see those applications right there. So you can see that we have, encoding, decoding algorithms that convert your DNA sequences, I'm sorry, your bits to DNA sequences and back again. You have chemistry and biology that allow you to actually create, synthetic DNA and preserve the DNA for a long-term storage. And then you also can use that same technology that's been discovered in chemistry and biology to, read the DNA back into your sequences, and then convert that back into your bits. And then again, you have also the engineering aspect, right, of how do you actually make a system end to end that does this in a automated fashion, and how you can like design, architect this library of data. So yeah, that's how I see the future of data centers taking shape, and I think it's going to take shape by really incorporating all research areas from STEM/STEAM to solve the world's complex problems.
Thanks so much. That was a really interesting take on it. And I hadn't really considered the connection between like DNA storage and the environmental impacts of data centers before. And some of the questions you raised, like this end-to-end systems designer, really fascinating. So thank you.
Thanks.
So moving on to Yael, your interests include cryptography and theoretical computer science. I think everyone would agree that in an internet and IoT world, privacy and security are among the biggest concerns of the day. Tell us about how cutting-edge research in cryptography will give us a more private and secure online future.
Okay, yeah, so, in cryptography, like, as in other fields such as data and so on, the research we do, of course, is dictated by the changing world, and whatever the world brings to us, that's what we start kind of thinking about and researching. So with kind of the change in the world, with a lot of small devices, smartphones, various kind of weak computational devices, with clouds, the computational world has really changed on us in the last, definitely 10 years, where we store our data elsewhere, often in some cloud. Our computations are often done elsewhere because we have kind of weak devices that can't do the computations on its own. We have a public ledgers where cryptocurrencies are being traded. Really, the world is changing, and this brings a lot of challenges to us cryptographers. So, for example, one thing is how do we give, our data to the cloud or outsource it in a way that is private, but then we can still gain some utility from it. So, for example, think of our emails. Okay, so suppose we don't want our server, our email server, to have access to our personal emails. Okay, that's easy. We have encryption, so we can just send all our emails encrypted. That's very nice. However, if the emails are encrypted, there's no way our servers will be able to give us to check for spam, for example. So they can't do any spam filters for us. That's a problem. So how do we encrypt our data and yet kind of conceal everything except for the fact of whether the email is spam or not? That's a very, very hard computational task. By the way, this task has a name. It's called functional encryption. We're still far from kind of solving it in general, but that's kind of an example of something that arises in this kind of world where we live in. Another example is, suppose we give all our data somewhere, I don't know, health data. We store it encrypted in some server, but then we want the server to do some, learn statistics, do some, computation on this data. How can we do computation on encrypted data? Okay, so that's what's called fully homomorphic encryption. And actually, we have now quite good solutions for it. And by now, there's a lot of work trying to make it practical. Also within Microsoft, there's a big push for that, and outside of Microsoft, of course. But even beyond privacy, I think cryptography spans well beyond the privacy. So let me give you an example. Suppose you put your data somewhere, even let's say you're not worried about privacy. It's not private, that specific data. But you want the cloud or some server to do computation for you on this data. How do you know that this computation was done correctly? Okay, so I know you put something in some public ledger, and then you want some, how do you know that a transaction is actually a good transaction? Maybe you need a proof that that's a good transaction, okay, or a proof that some computation was done correctly. Now, at first, someone say, okay, you need to prove that something has been done correctly. What does that have to do with cryptography? And the answer is actually it does have a lot to do with cryptography. And the reason is that without cryptography, it turns out we often do not have kind of succinct proofs. So in other words, suppose I'm a server. I want to prove to you that, okay, I did this long computation. The answer is 1, and I want to give you a short proof of this fact. Guess what? There is no short proof. Such a short proof, just for most computations, doesn't exist. Okay, so what do you do? As kind of I said in the opening remarks, I think cryptography is really a magic field. We're magicians, and our role, our job is to get around these impossibilities. And proofs is one example where we're able to get around these impossibilities by kind of changing the definition of a proof. So the way we get around, we say, you know what? Maybe I can't provide a mathematical proof. But what about a proof where if you're computationally bounded, so the only way for you to cheat is if you can factor huge numbers. So as long as you cannot solve my cryptographic assumption, whatever it is, then I have the guarantee that you cannot cheat. So that's an example of where we use kind of cryptography, or maybe that a priori doesn't, one may not think of it as cryptography because there's no hiding in there, but I guess cryptographic assumptions or hardness assumptions to go kind of beyond the realm of the land of possibility and go into the realm of impossibility. So these are all kind of examples of problems that came to us, kind of were kind of thrown at us because of this evolving world, and that we're really, really busy, working on. And it's really interesting to see that, like, about 20 years ago, cryptography was really a field of securing communication. That's what it was about, securing communication. Now, securing communication is such a small part of cryptography, and it's all about securing computation. So it really evolved, and securing kind of, computing unencrypted data and hiding things while revealing other things. Another example of a problem that now we're kind of obsessed with is that of obfuscation. So what if we want to give kind of a program to you, but you should not be able to reverse engineer the program. So you can run the program, you can get input-output, but you can't learn the intrinsic of the program. That's called code obfuscation or program obfuscation. And in general, all these kind of problems of hiding parts while revealing others. So in the case of obfuscation, we're hiding the internals of the program, but we still want the functionality of input-output. Or the case of functional encryption of the email, we hide our messages, but we still want kind of a functionality of is it spam or not spam. These are kind of really hard. These two, by the way, are very connected, even though it's hard to see. But there's some equivalence between the two, and these are really hard problems that I think now as a community we're wrestling with really, full force. There's been recently a huge breakthrough in this realm, and so it's kind of we're kind of an excited community now, but there's still a long ways to go. And to make these things practical is a long ways to go, even though I have to say that it's already, these things are being used. So the succinct proofs are already being used in many cryptocurrencies, or at least some cryptocurrencies. And so these things are deployed and used, but we still have ways to go to catch up with the very, very fast changing world.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really enjoyed that connection with how cryptography has evolved based on the changing needs of the world and this sort of moving from securing communication to computation. That's a really interesting way of seeing it. So now I want to move on to Andromachi. So you're working on computer systems and new storage technologies as well. So what's wrong with our current paradigms for systems and storage? What are you doing about it in your work with Project Silica? And why does abandoning the preconceptions of our current systems and starting from scratch help push the boundaries of what's possible?
Yeah, thanks, Emma. Yeah, I think I mentioned already that the existing technologies, storage technologies that we use in the cloud today are reaching their limits. And especially in today's cloud era, we need to radically rethink cloud storage in order to be able to cope with this unprecedented demand that we observe. At the same time, with the recent advances in artificial intelligence, there is high value in preserving the data that we store for a long time in order to enable the future generations, for example, to benefit from the findings of the past. Therefore, the lifetime of the media is critical, especially in the existing technologies, because we need periodically to replace the old media in order to make sure that the data is still readable, that the information is not lost. To give you an example, focusing on magnetic media, such as magnetic tapes and hard disks, they both technologies suffer from bit rot, and we need, actually both technologies have limited lifetime, and the media needs to be refreshed every 3 to 10 years. Therefore, we need to reread and rewrite terabytes or even petabytes of data every time. And we need to do so multiple times over the lifetime of the data. And we need to do that in order to make sure that the information is still there, is not lost. As you can imagine, this is a very expensive operation, and it is not only expensive in terms of actual cost, but it also is expensive in terms of storage bandwidth requirements. Because you need to migrate the data and at the same time be able to service the normal workload requests. And it is clear that the cost of the media is increasing as the data is aging. Now, I work on Project Silica, and Project Silica is super exciting because it provides eternal storage, eternal archival storage, using glass as the storage media. The glass itself is very resilient. It doesn't decay over time. And once you write the data inside the glass, the data remains in place for hundreds and thousands of years. In addition to that, it is a write once, read many media. It has very low cost. It's just glass. And it is very resilient. It is resistant to high temperatures and water. Yeah, another great property, for example, of glass is that it is electromagnetic field proof, and it can sustain environmental threats that could otherwise destroy valuable archived data. Now, let me talk a bit briefly about the technology that we use to read and write the data. To write the data inside the glass, we use femtosecond lasers. And by focusing the laser inside the glass, there is a nanostructure, a 3D nanostructure formed, which is called a voxel. And we can encode multiple bits of information within each single voxel by controlling the polarization of the light and the strength of the voxel. And by writing multiple voxels across hundreds of layers within a single piece of glass, we can achieve high densities. And actually, it's worth noting that at the moment, we are the densest optical storage technology, and we've already managed to write over a terabyte of data in a DVD-sized glass platter. Now, in order to read the data, we use a different technology, which is based on microscopy techniques. And in addition to that, we use machine learning, which allows us to decode the images that are created by shining light inside the glass. And in order to build an end-to-end storage system, we use a clean slate approach. And we innovate across the entire stack by co-designing the software, the hardware, and the control systems. And yeah, we have a great team, a multidisciplinary team with consisting of computer scientists, systems researchers like myself, machine learning experts, optical scientists, physicists, and engineers. And we are all working together in order to shape the future archival storage in the cloud.
Thanks so much. That's really fascinating. The amount of data that you're able to store in such a dense way. Thank you. So we're going to get to questions from the audience in just a sec. So feel free to go ahead and start submitting questions in the live Q&A, and you can upvote your favorite ones. But before we get to those questions, I'd like to first get your take on some of the most promising and important ideas being explored in computer science. So particularly ones that may seem more like science fiction than science right now. So what new lines of research are most exciting, and which ones could use some help from emerging researchers like the members of our audience? So we'll start off with Yael.
Okay, so so if you're asking what's most science fiction in my mind, generally in computer science, I would definitely think, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is machine learning. It boggles my mind how this community manages to do such amazing things, often without really understanding how this is done. It's this is really science fiction without really, this idea that the machines can just learn like this. And I mean, okay, speaking of like just ahead, which to me seems complete science fiction, but my colleagues are working on it, so apparently to them it's not. But the idea that machines are going to come up with proofs, for this you need creativity. How can a machine, like, where does it put us? It's really science fiction. It's like, it seems to me like once machines will be able to prove things for us, then we became below them in some sense. It's amazing because what makes us better, special in this world is our creativity. In my opinion, that's what makes us so unique. And if machines are going to be able to be creative too, that's complete science fiction, in my opinion. And it seems like it's getting there. So this is not my field of research, but I think that's definitely one of the science fiction things going on currently in computer science. I'm very excited to see how this will span out, how whether it indeed will they'll succeed in their goals, which to me, as I said, look completely unrealistic. But of course, I was humbly, I was proved wrong before. I didn't think they'd be able to make the progress they did so far, which is really, really incredible. Just by the past, I've learned they may be able to do it, and I'm really, really excited to see kind of the progress they make, or our audience among you, the students who are in that field. You must be very excited. It seems like a very, very exciting field to be in, and I'm curious to see what your future will bring to us.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, as someone who doesn't study machine learning as well, this area certainly seems more like science fiction to me as well. Exciting to watch what comes out of there. Yeah, so Andromachi, do you want to talk next?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think there are definitely many projects that Microsoft Research are running at the moment that feel like they're turning science fiction into reality. And I think that Project Silica and DNA storage are two great examples of revolutionizing cloud storage by using innovative storage media technologies. But yeah, thinking more broadly, I think that the cloud generally opens new exciting opportunities to innovate and design cloud-first technologies from scratch, specifically for the cloud. However, to innovate across the entire stack, we have to also work across disciplines. And in my view, this is a key ingredient. And yeah, in this scope, we have started the Optics for the Cloud program in Cambridge in collaboration with Azure. And in this program, researchers with different skill sets and expertise in different areas came together to investigate how and if we can use optics in order to change the future of storage, compute, and networking infrastructure for the cloud. And by bringing together computer scientists with optical scientists and physicists and engineers, this offers a great potential for even greater impact on the future technologies. And actually, yeah, we invite the research community to join us in this effort.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, I really like how you and Bichlien both keep coming back to the interdisciplinary nature of some of these problems and how it's not going to be solved just by computer science, but by looking outside of our discipline as well. Yeah, and Bichlien, do you want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, let's see. So outside of my field, I would say I think quantum computing is going to be revolutionary. You know, it kind of blows my mind to think about what that means for quantum chemistry or quantum biology or quantum engineering. I think it, you know, opens a whole can of worms or I guess Pandora's box of, you know, new inventions. So I think that's really exciting. I think within my field, I think I'm most excited about biocomputation. You know, specifically because, you know, biology has kind of evolved molecular machinery to, you know, to search like these large address spaces of millions and millions of targets in parallel with very low energy requirements and pretty quickly with high accuracy. So I think that's really interesting, and biofabrication will probably be another step forward. And then another I think is interesting is biodegradable transient electronics, and you know how there's going to be this interface of new material development that will help us make more sustainable cloud infrastructure. So that's why I envision.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for your thoughts there, Bichlien. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the live audience Q&A. So again, feel free to send any questions that you have in Microsoft Teams, and also upvote ones that you find interesting, and you can hear responses from the panelists. So we can start with our first one here. Okay, let me see. Okay, so maybe we can go ahead and combine these two questions. What advice would you give to an undergrad who's interested in pursuing STEM as a career? And then also, what advice would you give for first-year grad students? So, you know, people who are just starting off, you know, in STEM, whether it's, you know, as an undergrad or maybe just starting out their grad career. I don't know if any of you wants to go first, or I can randomly pick one of you.
I can say a few words on that. Let me say about the graduate one first. So my advice for a graduate student, probably same actually for undergrads, but I think in grad it's harder to do, is to really find something that you like. You know, find problems that grab you. To be successful, what I learned is not so much about how smart, quote unquote, we are, whatever that even means. It's about finding our passion. So, you know, I see students succeeding when they can't go to sleep because they can't, you know, stop thinking about their problems. And that's a place where you want to be in, you know, excited and kind of think about your problems when you shower, think about your problems when you sleep. And that's when kind of great things happen. And another thing is which is my advice to all of you, is try to stay focused on your goals. Don't let the grad student who are sitting next to you and, you know, the office on that side or that side influence your your own path. It's very easy to look at the grad student who just submitted, I don't know, X papers to this conference where you had 0 papers to submit, and kind of fall into kind of a I'm not good enough kind of mode. And this, I can't stress enough how this mode is false. It's not, first, it's irrelevant, and the fact that there's someone that you perceive is better, it does not, there's room for a lot of people, and people have different strengths, and it's very easy to look at a strength that someone else has that you feel you're lacking. Whether you're lacking or not is a totally different story, and discount your own strengths. So my recommendation to your advice to you, don't look around. Whatever your fellow graduate students do, that's great. You focus on your own, agenda and path. And I just want to add to that my own personal story. When I was a grad student and I graduated from MIT, we were 5 students the same year as me graduating in cryptography. So we were 5 students, all, competing against the same little block of who knows who's even higher in cryptography. At that time, also, crypto was not that hot like it is today. It was harder to get jobs in cryptography. And I remember telling my advisor, who was Shafi Goldwasser, there's no way I can get a job, because I graduated with 5 papers. There were students that who graduated with 20 papers. I was like, there's no way I'm going to get a job. I felt like I'm ready to, give up on it. And, I got great offers. And the point is, it's very easy to count the 20 papers that, your friend has, and discount what you did. So, and that's an example where it's very easy to discount, right? I mean, 20 versus 5. Come on. But you know what? Still, I managed to get great jobs, and they got good jobs, great jobs too. So the point is, whatever the noise that makes you less productive, get it out of your system, get it out, just focus on, on your path. And the last thing, which is important, get advice. Make sure to have mentors that support you, that are kind of your cheerleaders, and help you through the road, because this path can be rocky. And I think it has been rocky to almost all of us at points. Maybe, I mean, it's not rocky all the time, but it's very, very common that there's paths that, you hit a rocky path, a rocky area. And from the people I know, almost everybody I know hit that rocky place, no matter how great they are. So when it's your turn to hit that rocky place, try to get support, try to have your mentors kind of lift you up, and know that we all hit that rocky area. And what you need to do is just plow through it, and, and it's okay. It's part of the path, of the process.
I'm going to upvote that.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. Yeah. As a second-year PhD student, I very much appreciate that advice. I don't know, Bichlien and Andromachi, if you want to add anything to that, or we can also move on to other questions as well.
Yeah, I think Yael expressed it perfectly. I completely agree with her. One more thing is just, apart from following your passion, finding your passion, be brave and actually look for opportunities to grow, get outside of your comfort zone. And this is only, this is only good. This will only do you good. And I think it is important to focus on the good stuff, believe in yourself, and do not try to compare with others. That's not going to help, and it's worthless in the end. Just be brave.
Well, thank you. And Bichlien, if you want to add anything as well, or we can also move on.
I think everything that has been said.
No, it's been fantastic advice. I wouldn't know that either. So I think this is maybe like a little more. This next question maybe a little more targeted for Bichlien and Andromachi based on the work that you're doing. But how can you limit, or I suppose, how can you shape the problem statement when you're working in an interdisciplinary area? So if you're working with so many disciplines, how do you actually narrow in the problem statement that you're interested in, when you're sort of bringing in so many different, areas in your work?
Who wants to take it first? Andromachi, do you?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so how do you narrow down? Well, I think, again, follow your passion. Think about what problem you want to solve. Like, what is the challenge that you want to solve? It's oftentimes it's the what, the how, and the how. So you don't have to draw upon all of the things in your toolkit, right? If they don't make sense to use. So like, for example, when we're thinking about storage systems, data storage systems, the question is, okay, so we're generating so much data, what can we do to store? Well, we got to think about, are we talking about long-term storage? Are we talking about short-term storage? How often are we going to access the data? And then what materials or what methods would be more useful for like an archival storage system versus something that would replace tape versus something that would replace flash. And so you kind of go through these series of questions, and then you come to say, okay, well, if this is what I'm targeting, then I need this criteria. And then you kind of pull from all these different fields and say, oh, can these can this from, let's say I'll just say DNA, but and then Andromachi can talk about silica, is okay. So we need a high density. What is really dense? Carbon atoms, molecules are really dense, and so forth and so on. So that's how I think about addressing the problem. Andromachi, you want to go?
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, we are in the same thing. We all have the same goal. We are all targeting to solve the same problem. However, people in different disciplines have different ways of approaching the problem. So it's a highly interactive process. It is like a feedback loop, and you need to communicate and interact continuously with your colleagues. Yeah, it might take some time, but we can find a common language, and we can agree on what are the priorities and what are the basic principles of the system that we are designing. And it's, personally speaking, it's been a great experience working with all these people. I've learned so many things, and it feels like every day I'm learning something new about physics and optics, and yeah, it's a great experience.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's really, just really interesting to hear how you guys approach these interdisciplinary problems. So this next question is a bit more targeted at Yael, I think. So a lot of the progress in cryptography has been built on top of assumptions that will be broken with quantum computation. So how do you think this will be handled by the community, and what kind of new assumptions do you think will be needed?
Okay, I'm so happy that for the question, because when I was talking about the world changing on us, this is a huge example of how the world is changing on us. These people are building quantum computers that are going to break all our assumptions. So of course, as a community, we're in a bit of a panic mode and are trying to make sure that all our systems are post-quantum secure. And there's been a lot of effort trying to do that by all of us. And now the biggest candidate, or the a most prominent candidate, is learning with error assumption, which is an assumption that seems to be very robust. It has worst case to average case kind of reduction. It's believed to be post quantum secure. It's a kind of a lattice problem. And so we're trying to get a lot of our cryptography based on assumptions, solid assumptions such as learning with error. But I want to say that the quantum is not just about the quantum attacks are way beyond just breaking the crypto assumption, actually. They're much more severe than just breaking our crypto. So even if you build cryptography based on an assumption that we believe to be post-quantum secure, it doesn't mean that our system, Okay, so sorry, let me state again. If we built a system that we proved that classically it's secure under like learning with errors, which in turn is believed to be a post-quantum secure assumption, it does not necessarily mean that our system is post-quantum secure. And that may be counterintuitive at the beginning because you're like, no, but you know, the assumption is post-quantum secure, you proved under assumption. But the proof is a classical proof. So for example, one of the way we prove things, for example, let's say it's an interactive system. The way we prove security is we say, well, if I suppose there's an adversary, we're going to kind of rewind him. But guess what? Quantum adversaries, you can't rewind. You know, there's no cloning. So all our proofs kind of the proof strategies are classical. And so we need to make sure that even if our scheme is post-quantum secure, like is classically proven under a post-quantum secure assumption, we need to ensure that the proof itself is in the post-quantum world. And there's a lot of effort on doing this right now. A lot of grants money is spent, you know, on this post-quantum. You know, I think in Microsoft there's a lot of effort on doing it. Essentially, as a community, we're kind of panicking. We have solutions, but we need to make sure also that we have some solutions to some of our problems, not to all our problems, but we need to also make sure they're efficient enough, you know, that they can be widely deployed and so on and so forth. So yes, this is definitely a big part of the research of the community and my own as well. So thank you for the question. That's a great question.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I really enjoyed how you discussed not just like the post-quantum secure like assumptions, but like also how like our proof techniques need to change as well. I think that's something that often gets glossed over, but I think it's just really fascinating. So I think we probably have time for one more question. So a question people seem to be interested in the chat. Where do you see automation impacting the science community the most? So I suppose you could take this in sort of any direction that you're interested in, whether it's related to your field or not. But yeah, the role of automation today.
That's a great question. Gosh, so right now, right, the challenges of getting data from a life sciences is that it's very manual. And then once you receive the data, it's not in some, you know, unified method of reporting, right? So there's not there's no uniformity there. So it's hard to, you know, collate the data and then, you know, put it into some machine learning model. And so I think automation comes into play here by helping kind of normalize or standardize these data sets that we could generate from either, precision medicine or material development or, energy, energy catalysts, things like that. So I think automation plays a role in being able to help us bridge the gap in terms of the time delays associated with data acquisition, and then help close that loop, the data automation model loop.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, especially with the interdisciplinary area that you're working at. That's really interesting. And does anybody else want to add to that as well before we wrap up here?
So maybe I'll just say a word that actually it's surprising to me how our world is not as automated as it should be. I think I'm anticipating that there's going to be I think, our world is a bit behind our science, it's always kind of lagging behind. And I anticipate a big change, especially to health, where things are really, really behind. Things that the automation there is really poor. And I anticipate that in the next year, that area is going to be revolutionized, and the automation there is going to be kind of provide us with great understanding and a lot of great discoveries. So yeah, that's a great question as well.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Health is definitely an area where where automation would be really, really interesting to see. I don't know, Andromachi, if you want to add anything as well. Or?
Oh, I don't have anything to add. I agree with both. Yeah, I think automation will play a key role in the future, and in both in healthcare, and also the automation is needed in order to reduce the latencies observed in data acquisition, as Bichlien said already. And yeah, there are exciting times ahead of us.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. This is really great to talk with all of you, and we've sadly reached the end of our time. So I hope you all enjoyed this session, and I want to leave you with a quick reminder that you can access a recorded version of this panel discussion on the Microsoft Research YouTube channel in the coming days. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you,
Emma.
guys. Thank you.
It was great.
Thank you, and thank you, Emma, for the great moderation.
Thank you all.